Now, here's your hosts, the League Dad, Kevin, Mitchell, and Alistair.
What's up, gamers, and welcome to another episode of the All In Podcast. I am the League Dad, and I am back. It's been a couple weeks, and I'm joined by Kevin and Mitchell. Unfortunately, Alistair is back in Canada, but he's actually listening to this recording right now on Discord, and he's going to be feeding our chat room there with any of his thoughts as we're discussing about things today. But today, we wanted to squeeze in an episode right before the new year. Basically, I'm calling this the Riot Gripe Session because there's been a lot of things happening, that Riot has announced, that they've put out, that they've communicated to us that I think a lot of the community is not happy about. It almost seems like there's a disconnect between what Riot feels or what we want as a community and what Riot thinks is the direction that the company should go. So there's several things. Most recently is the LCS schedule changes. I know that's a big one. So I just want to jump in right there. Let's start with that, and then there's a plethora of other things that we'll get to. Really, just like in this whole question of Riot, WTF, what are you doing? What is going on with the game? What's the future direction of the game? So let's start out with the LCS schedule changes. For those who don't know, the LCS is being changed to start on Fridays. And is it just Fridays or is it Thursday and Fridays?
Instead of Saturday.
Yeah. And the biggest thing that I think most people are kind of like whatever on the days, but the times that it's starting is 12 p.m. PST, which I think for most people, especially in this podcast, at least, that is an odd time. So let me just leave it off there. Kevin, hit me with your thoughts on this change on the LCS.
Yeah. So my first impression, as all of us, especially me and Mitchell, who are West Coast fans, it's kind of weird, right? Noon. I mean, yeah, if I'm working from home, maybe I could check in, but like I'm not paying attention. I'm not engaging, right? I can't enjoy it. So I thought that was weird. It's a little better for East Coast. Is my first impression. It starts at 3 Eastern Standard Time, but like, okay, fine. But then the thing that really annoyed me was that I saw that the best matches are all front loaded, almost all front loaded. It was like a lot of Immortals, Golden Guardians, who maybe Golden Guardians will be good, but like a lot of Immortals, Golden Guardians, and stuff like that, Dignitas at the end of the day. So say you finish your workday, you're on the drive home, you want to listen to LCS, you just listen to the worst match ever, like almost all the time. That's crazy. Not sure what they were trying to do there, but the general speculation is this is supposed to appeal to a European crowd. I'm just going to leave it on that summary because there's so much to talk about, but I'll just leave it there. That's my breakdown.
Yeah, I'm not down with this. 12 p.m. is like I'm gonna be watching VODs now. I'm not gonna be really watching it live. I didn't watch it live a ton anyways on the weekends, but I still did. I'm just not going to watch it live at all, I don't think, because I'm gonna be at work and I won't be able to really focus at all on the games, which I like to do. And if all the good games are front loaded as well, that's really frustrating. I didn't know that. Because, well, I don't know, it just makes it seem like, those are what our best views get, right? TSM, Team Liquid, C9, those are what our big top viewers are. And if they're all like in the middle of the day, like who's actually watching? So I think my biggest like complaint about this is like Riot is just so unclear about who they're actually targeting.
Yeah.
Like they said that their numbers are gonna back this up, but who are you actually targeting? Because you're not targeting the workforce and you're not targeting students. So who are you targeting? There's not a lot of other people that exist in the world that aren't, workers or students. So if it's to appeal to EU, it doesn't really. That's stupid, right? We're an LCS podcast, so an LCS. We're NA. So yeah, I don't know. I think the entire sentiment of all of the Reddit community and Twitter and personalities. I just read a Reddit post about Papa Smithy going on Travis Gafford's podcast, and you actually see Ender in the comments, and he's like, "Yo, this is stupid. Like, I can't watch it ever. I've been watching this for 10 years." And I'm like, "Yeah, he's a caster, and he thinks it's stupid." So I don't really know where the upside is here. So yeah.
Yeah, and then so Alistar's take was that our previous podcast that Mitchell and Alistar and I did was we talked about how is LCS going on, is League going on maintenance mode? Maybe League isn't, but LCS does seem like it's getting the backstage. Like, remember this Thursday, Friday slot and these weird hours. This used to be what LEC or EU LCS was saddled with all the time, right? They got the crappy hours, not prime time, and then LCS gets the prime slot right afterward. Now LCS is slotting there, and you can't just come back and tell me this is the prime spot, right? I will say there are some facts that you can add to it. We know that LCS viewership is already decreasing. This is going to hurt it more. So this is probably not a great, like, maybe they'll just say, oh, LCS isn't getting good viewership. Look at these stats we got from 2023, but you're sabotaging your own league. To their credit, there are two things that might matter. One, 75% or whatever the stats always thrown out there of the population lives in Eastern Standard Time Zone or Central and Eastern Standard Time. So actually, a majority of this country lives in that time zone. So making LCS better for that time zone could be worth it, right? And then two, according to some other podcasts, I was listening to Travis Gaffer's podcast as well as Monty's podcast. They were talking about behind the scenes, and like apparently there have been years where European viewership is like in the 30-40s of percentage. And I was like, that's crazy because they actually have a really bad hour time slot. I think Europe is like
life?
6 hours ahead or something like that.
What are they doing? They're just staying up
Right.
until
I don't know why they're watching
night.
it, right? Yeah. So maybe this will make the numbers look better. My last thing I'll say is that we were saying burn it all down, try something different because the default is not working. The default is trending down. Frankly, North American fans are like us hardcore fans care, right? But more and more aren't caring. So maybe we need that momentum of like, there's 300,000 people watching on Twitch, and let me check this out to get things exciting again. I will say my personal take is, this seems too risky. You're losing your core fans. Like us, we're an LCS podcast. We've done this for 4 years. We love LCS. I went to in-person events. Everyone's trying to go to in-person events. No one's going to be able to go to the studio. It's at 12 o'clock in LA. What the heck?
That's so
It's
true.
Lunch break.
It might be half crowd, quarter crowd. Maybe they have to get their family members to come just to see it. Like, people are working. So what? Are we just going to have a COVID studio when COVID's not here anymore?
Yeah. And I heard they talked about that, with the lack of fans being in the studio on Hotline League. They were kind of talking about like, will that affect the players? How we went through COVID and it was like players play differently without a crowd and with a crowd. But from what Papa Smithy said, he said, I guess mostly for players, maybe it does make a factor, but as far as in terms of difference, it really doesn't, I guess, in their minds. Where it does make a difference as far as hype and energy is for the casters, because when there's nobody in there, there's no energy for them to feed off of, and then it kind of feels dry. So for them to not have a crowd in there, it is going to be weird for casters, to do anything. And I know even Azale had his reservations. He kind of made a long Twitter post just talking about how this will go. And Riot, claims that it's their internal numbers, and they always do this to us. Like, it's always our internal numbers that are showing this. But here's the thing, like, even if it is geared towards maybe grabbing more of EU fan base, like our advertisers, our sponsors, like, if we're sponsoring like, Verizon or like US based companies, like it's not going to matter. Like State Farm, it's not going to be good. Like they don't care if we have, European viewers, you know what I mean? Like they're not going to buy for Verizon if it's not accessible to them or if it's for the US market. Right. And so I don't think that's actually, there's a disconnect there, because that can't be the reason, because if it is, then you're kind of just pooping your sponsors, right? Like or you're going to have to get new ones, essentially. Right. And so it really doesn't make sense as far as like a money-making standpoint. Like I said, unless they have some kind of scheme and plan as far as spreading out their sponsorship globally. And then maybe that makes sense. But as far as like our US fans, especially West Coast in-person events, like that is gone. And for me, I am happy with the day change. Honestly, for me, a lot of times the weekends were hard because I'm doing stuff on weekends, I have to watch the VODs. But to me, and I think what it seems like the sentiment is that the time is really the hardest thing. And Kevin, you did mention that for East Coast, it may not be as bad. And I can see that. And you're never really going to please everyone because it is a global game. But this just really does seem kind of like a slap in the face to most of us who have been watching League for a long time, who are not, are either in the workforce or still in school and cannot watch those games live. It really does kind of feel like a slap. So
Yeah, I actually do also like the days. I like that it's on
right.
Thursday and Friday too. I think that's cool. I would have liked it like, yeah, maybe have it be later in the day and do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then split it up even more. That would make more
Mm.
sense. Like maybe do a little more like how LCK does it. Have it later in the day, have it more spread out, but it's you know, it's still on the weekdays. Um, I yeah, even for East Coast though, right? So if you're Central Eastern Time, it starts at 2 p.m. You're still missing if you work a normal job, like you're still missing a good chunk of hours. If it starts at 3 p.m. for East Coast, you're still missing a good chunk of hours of LCS you can watch it live. And if all
Hmm.
the good games are front loaded, then you're missing all the good games, no matter what time zone you're on. If you work at 9 to 5, even if you don't, right? Like a lot in a tech, I can get off at 3 sometimes, maybe. Still, that's 3 hours in for West Coast, and for East Coast, they're just getting off work. So I feel like a lot of it just doesn't line up at all. Just starting it at 12 p.m. PST. Um, let's see. A point that Alistair made that I think is interesting is to fizzle out co-streaming. That is maybe a thing that they don't like co-streaming because of like, co-streamers just shitting on the game 24/7. But one of
Yeah.
the biggest co-streamers is no longer co-streaming. It's
Yeah.
Double Lift. He's back in the LCS. So like, does that even matter anymore to them? I like it's pretty it feels like the timing of all this is so messed up because we just got our biggest player coming back and then we do this to our broadcast times.
You think that they're doing it to spite Doublelift? For all the interested?
A
He
main
fed off all the
character.
energy of the audience, right? And they're like, hey, when the audience can't come in? 12 o'clock.
Yep.
Exactly.
Screw you, Doublelift. You get COVID era audience post COVID. Your
Oh my
hell is
god.
eternal.
Someone
Uh,
hates Double for some reason, even though he's like gonna he would like bring if it was just normal viewership, he would like I don't know, revitalize LCS. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
just sad. Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
one thing though, is that during on Twitch, right? The most viewership, just in terms of population of people on Twitch, is around that like 12 to 4 slot, apparently. Okay, allegedly, according to people in the industry. And I'm like, okay, I could believe that, but are they the people who are watching LCS and who will care, right?
Exactly.
Because that is data, right? You can say, oh, the data shows, but the thing is, Riot doesn't ever show us the data in depth, right? They just cherry pick facts that support their argument, and then 2 years later they say, oh, or 3 years later they're like, oh, look, the data shows this other thing that we've been saying, like double elim, right? For the longest time they said it wouldn't work. When LCS was so popular and it was the biggest thing on Twitch, like 600K viewers for Dignitas versus Renegades losing to Rift Herald, right? People watch that shit. And we double elim didn't work then, but why does it work now? It's because
Yeah.
they just make up I think they make up a reason and then they figure out whatever like data point will support it and then ignore everything else. I'm being a little
Yeah.
facetious, but it
No,
does
that's
feel
how
like that,
companies
right?
roll. That's how companies all over the world roll, dude. They have a narrative that for some reason they want to push, and they just throw
Yeah.
everything to support that narrative, regardless.
And
And the
it's
narrative
weird
just
though
like
because
runs
I
that.
just that's the case because it does feel like that. Like I wonder what their end game plan is or what the reasoning is behind that because we
Oh,
really
I
don't
I
know.
got it. It's Valorant. Like everyone was joking,
Yeah,
oh,
that's
making room for
right. Yeah.
Valorant, blah 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 blah. No, now that it's like, like I was thinking, okay, moving it to weekdays. All right,
Hmm.
it's not necessarily like, oh yeah, that's just all for Valorant, so they can have the weekend slot. Maybe it just makes more sense for weekdays. But now putting it at 12 p.m., it's like, are they actually trying to kill LCS? Get all the funding out, remove it, move all of their broadcast and production talent, and just throw it at Valorant in 2 years or something? Because LCS viewership has died.
Hmm.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? They're
Yeah.
like, well, LCS is dying. Let's make it worse. Oh, now we have to put all our resources into Valorant. That's where the money is. And then now, in 2 or 3 years, LCS is just dead. So I actually think that this just pushes that narrative even harder.
Yeah.
It was kind of a meme. It was kind of a joke before. I'm like kind of on board with the conspiracy theory now. It's
Right. Yeah.
all Valorant. Yeah.
I push back a little bit. I think this is a common narrative, right? Because Valorant is such an important esport for them. It's growing. It's really hot amongst younger kids. So
Yeah.
like they really want to focus on it, and they're not screwing this one up. They're doing a partnership program instead of franchising. They're basically learning everything. They're doing 3 tournaments. The thing is, this data that they shared on this is one point they did share, which was like there's only like a 9% overlap between Valorant and League viewership. Assuming they're not lying, right? It's hard to cherry pick this. And then this is more conjecture. Amongst all my friends who play Valorant, almost no one watches LCS. And they just like all moved on from LCS to Valorant. So it is possible, I agree, that they're looking for their favorite child, right? Like they put them in the best spot. I agree with that. But at the same time, you don't want League to be like they're using like very similar resources. I think at least for the North American production of Valorant, they're like in the same like Santa Monica area doing the same production, like sharing staff. So you don't want to waste even more of LCS's time, like and talent, and like make them worse. Now, are they focusing on their favorite child? Yes, they are. I mean, League is unfortunately a mature thing. They know that it's reliable. If they screw up Valorant, though, they might be screwing up their future.
Yeah, I think too. Like if you think about it, like the whole thing. I think it's not just this. This is a big part, but I think the whole lack of change also, like where we have been clamoring for changes in our format, changes for, spring split or something. And the fact that LEC got major changes in their format. And here we are stuck with the same old best of ones. From what I'm looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even think there's a the lock-in tournament. Not that, I mean, there was debate anyways whether that's even beneficial or not, but I thought it was at least, it creates some kind of hype, but they've gotten rid of that even. So it just like it just starts. It just basically starts. There's no best of threes. There's no change. There's nothing exciting. In fact, they're changing the days. Like that's the biggest move. And it's like, it feels like there's just no hype around this upcoming split when off of the back of Worlds, we're like, man, in-person events, getting hype again. Like maybe LCS will be awesome, and they'll come up with something new. And I don't know what it is. I know there was discussion with the Players Union over in the EU and how they had a big part of like getting that format change, and how a lot of orgs or bottom tier orgs didn't like the change because, it would directly affect them because they're not so great, and best of three is probably not the best format for them. But they pushed for it and it happened. And I don't know what needs to be done here or if that's even possible, but it just seems like we are going in the opposite direction. So not just the day change, but the actual fact that the format is exactly the same. We don't even have a
whole tournament.
Yeah, exactly. Minus a whole tournament.
We just lost stuff.
Right. Like there's just no hype at all. Like, and that's why like we're not going to talk about it today because we want to do it closer to when the split starts. But the roster moves are exciting, and I think that's the one thing that I'm holding on to. That hopefully, maybe there's going to be some cool competition, right, to see these new rosters. But everything else outside of that doesn't seem like it's set up for a hype spring split. What do you guys think about the format? Lack of change, with it still being exactly the same.
Yeah, it's a LEC with best of threes.
Yeah, right.
I mean, LEC got the best product, dude. Very long story short, and I only cursorily look at LEC because that's not our podcast focus. But LEC, like, they get best of threes, right? Already. That was what we should have been doing. We've done it once before. People will always point to like, oh, viewership dropped. We did 2 streams at once, with one of the streams being like the Golden Guardians equivalent at the time. Like it was garbage the way they did it. They just wanted to, they wanted to not have as much like days of fully paid workers, I guess. At the time, they wanted to, I don't know, make it easier for themselves. Honestly, it just was nonsense. So they used that as justification for double ELM not working. But LEC is their king product right now, right? It's growing. It's the biggest in the Western market, and ERLs are doing well. So the system is healthy there. So why would they be doing best of threes with 3 splits and like? Also, best teams, the better you perform, the more time you get in prime slots. In fact, the worst teams actually just play less games. Like if you are bottom 2 or whatever it was, you just stop playing at some point during the split. You just suck so much that you're not worth the broadcast time. That's great. Like professional sports and competitive anything is not a charity.
That's right.
I'm really happy that players get a guaranteed minimum, right? Like the 60K they need to survive, and they also get housing, right, from their teams. But from there on, like you need to earn your right to be at the table. And it's so strange to me that we're not doing even one of those things. Like I'm totally fine with the risks on the days and whatever. I really don't like the risks on the time, but at least they're taking a change. So why not? You've already burned all the bridges with your Western, at least West Coast audience, right? Why not try best of 3? Why not try 3 splits? What is going on over there?
It's you know what? It's North American laziness. We talk about our players and our orgs being lazy. It's also our production and our staff
That's what
and
it
our
feels like.
NALCS like representatives. They're just lazy, dude. I feel like they're not doing creative things. Their creativity is going in a bad direction instead of a good direction. Our players union, I've never heard of them fighting for anything. I've never heard of them doing a goddamn thing.
Yeah.
So I it's just kind of depressing, guys. Like it's just it seems like this like NA mentality is seeping through every aspect of the product of the scene. Um, so I, Alistair made a nice point in chat. Maybe things have to get worse before they get better.
Hmm.
It's so we'll take that with a grain of salt. Maybe this has to happen, and then it's a disaster this year, and then people get a complaint enough that they actually get really upset and they keep talking about it even more. And we'll have someone like Double F being like, "This is a load of crap." Maybe he tries crazy hard to play a lot and win a lot, and he says this format is a load of crap. Like it needs to change, and maybe something happens for next year, right? And this is maybe that year that does it. But it does feel like we went 3-15. We were all talking about burning it down after Worlds, and instead of burning it down, it's like things just rolled over and died instead. There was no burning; it just fell
Hmm.
over.
Yeah.
So I hope it doesn't keep going because I hope we just have some competitive League of Legends and we can prove that we deserve to still be a major region and we can keep going because it's
Yeah.
just all going in a rough direction.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like we have to wait and see, right? Like, will their stats actually back it up? For a lot of us that are outside looking in, this doesn't look like a good move. But
No.
we still got to wait and see.
Yeah.
Maybe it does become like a genius move and it actually revives LCS. That would be fantastic. But do I think that's going to happen? I'm not sure, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think here's my concern. Okay, yes, things can get better. They have to get worse before they get better. That is true. That adage usually holds true. However, sometimes the thing just dies, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
Kevin,
yeah,
no. Yeah.
I hate to
true.
like that's why the companies don't always revive infinitely, right? There
Hmm.
there are companies like Blizzard who are going on a downward trend.
Well, they got
And
bought.
here's my
Yeah.
concern. My concern is that they're not even trying to like sometimes you burn down for old forests so that you can let new ones grow, right? They're not trying to do that. They're just like poisoning their thing and then not planting
Yeah.
new trees elsewhere. They're just poisoning the ground and they're like, oh look, the ground's poisoned, that we can't grow anything here, guys, sorry.
Yeah.
And that's really concerning because I do fully admit it could be in that a month or two we'll have way higher Twitch viewership than we've ever had, which isn't that, or than last year, right? Which isn't hard. It's like 140K for a random game or 100K. So you hit 200K, you're already almost doubling, right? That's great. But what if you miss? Or what if getting more European viewership, which might show up, right? We don't know. We're not Europeans. And Europeans aren't really like telling us as a united whole what they're going to do. What if losing interest in the local scene is like the death of LCS long term? Like it might be short term. Hey, we got 200K because that's what the data
Right.
shows. But no one grows up in NA wanting to go play pro anymore.
Yep.
They're just like, who cares, dude?
Yeah.
It's like how
Our own
Major League
region doesn't
Soccer
even
in
watch.
yeah, Major
Yeah.
League Soccer in North America is, well, okay, that's a bad example because it's been growing, but it was a
Yep.
joke for the longest time growing up, right? Everyone grows up playing soccer. Everyone grew up in my generation. Everyone played League like at least once. They tried it because it was the most popular game. But if there's no future here, who wants to go pro? How are we going to get another JoJo Piano? Like we barely got JoJo Piano and Danny last year, and like a few others. There's just that's going to dry up totally. And so maybe we'll just become the international league where everyone comes to play, and that's fine. But at least for us oldies, like the league, the NALCS we knew is dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
We're
kind
we're
of
gonna
sad.
we're gonna turn into LEC too with some LCK thrown in there. Like it's if we're already catering to the EU viewership, right?
Yeah.
Um, I it is kind of interesting though that it kind of makes sense from a business standpoint where if the league is doing really poorly, right? We went 3-15, we're kind of the laughing stock. We had the highest salaries, and then we go into a year where we let go of a lot of players, and there was like very clear rumors that salaries were significantly dropped, especially
Hmm.
from Doublelift, right? So a lot of people were saying that their salaries were significantly lowered. So if you go into a business like perspective where your product isn't doing well, and your product is not attracting as many people, and it's like there's less money in the system economically, it just has lower amounts of dollars, then yeah, you would put less priority on it. So it just seems like all these things kind of led up to an unfortunate, like, it's just a business move, right? Riot isn't saying like, hey, we believe in this product, we want to try and make it better. They're saying that in PR, and then they're acting differently and saying this is just not good for business. We
Yeah.
don't make money off of it. Um, so I do think that it honestly feels like if we keep doing poorly internationally and our salaries keep dropping, yeah, I actually think the league will just die. Like if those two things keep happening and the viewership is like this and we're getting these like bozo ass times and stuff, I think it just will die. So a whole lot of things have to change in the next this year and next year for it to
Yeah.
not die, like genuinely, like from a business standpoint. Maybe Riot gets some new ownership and they say, we love LCS. This is where we started, so we're gonna dump a bunch of money into a losing product, and then that product will bounce back in a couple of years. But I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Companies just don't run like that, right? Riot's owned by Tencent. It's a Chinese company. Like, yo, Chinese companies are fucking ruthless, man. They just are about the numbers and the money sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
I think too, like, okay, so just a couple things to close out on this note. One, we did talk about the fall of TSM kind of correlating with the fall of LCS. And it's
yikes.
eerily true with the, not mere coincidence in the timeline of things and how like the collapse of the two seemingly go hand in hand. But also on another sad kind of side note in kind of relation of this whole doom and gloom with the LCS is, PastryTime is retiring, and then Phreak
Freak.
is
Yeah.
now off the cast. I mean, he is still in Riot, and he's moving to game development, I guess. But, what if these are just ways that they've also cut costs? I'm not saying that he's still obviously getting paid in Phreak, and is what I'm saying, but maybe it's a different budget. Now he's getting paid from like the game development side as instead of like the LCS portion of
Yeah.
things. And they're like,
Yeah.
hey,
Good
they're
point.
like, hey, Phreak, like we got to make budget cuts. Like, how would you like to just shift here instead? And with PastryTime, maybe it was just a cut, like, hey, you're great, but if we're going to keep casters, we're going to keep, Kobe and Azael, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and Jat, like those are the
Captain
tenured
Flowers, yeah.
casters and Ken Flowers, right? So,
That's a really good point too, right? Because then when you see business costs, what happens? What's happening
yeah,
in the tech industry all around is that you cut less workers, but you pay the workers that you keep the same, and you just make them work more.
yeah,
So I haven't heard about any new people being hired to cast. And if we go into next year and there's no new people, then yeah, all that happened was they cut people and they just made their same workers work more.
yeah,
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's just, Riot's a tech company, right? They're falling into with, you know, Tesla, Microsoft, Facebook, Meta, blah
yeah,
blah blah, Amazon, all that stuff. So rip.
I really like that idea. Not the idea of cutting, but like the theory you're putting
yeah,
aside. Because like if you think about it, Phreak was like one of the last tenured people there, the last salaried
hmm,
people in the broadcast. Like Captain Flowers, I know was a freelancer. I know that like Shocks went to freelancing, which was a big deal. Like a
hmm,
lot of people went to freelancing. So
Yeah.
of the salaried people, like maybe they were like, "This is what you would be offered next year." Freaking Freak's like, "Well, I've always like balance anyway. There's like a whole different budget for that. Just
yep,
go to go do that instead, right?" And he's not gonna say it publicly, obviously, because he's still working with the company.
right,
But that's definitely a sign of the times. Also, like you mentioned, TSM's FTX deal fell through.
yeah,
LCS's
that's
FTX deal
true.
also fell through. They were
Yeah.
saying this was a huge deal. Like the FTX gold difference was just there the whole time, all split, right?
Hmm.
So they probably are missing like I think LCS was 12 trillion or million, and TSM was what 210 million over 10 years, so 21 million maybe per year
Yeah, money.
Oh
if they
god,
did it
crypto's
evenly split.
so
So
dead.
both are so screwed, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
TSM may claim they're still profitable. That's bullshit. There's
Yeah,
no way,
yeah,
guys.
yeah,
They're cutting a lot of costs if they're still profitable over there.
for sure.
And LCS is probably not hurting that much in the sense that like they can be bankrolled, but their budget is just getting cut, right?
Yeah.
These are tough times, and they want to wait and see where the economy is going first.
Yep.
Business decisions. It's all about the money when it comes down to it. That's
It
basically it.
is
It's always
all
that.
Remember
about
when
the
LCS said
money.
we don't care about the money? This
Yeah.
isn't here to make profit or anything. This was like their
Uh,
like 2013, 2014 stance on LCS. Those were some
what?
Hey, those
How
were
interesting
the
far
debates.
we've
days.
come.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, that's LCS. Let's go to another Riot WTF moment in their announcement of a rework of the most beloved champion in League of Legends, Yuumi.
Oh boy.
I think this is the most unanimous champ that's been voted on to just be deleted. I think the most hated champ, even more than some of the other top candidates that are usually there. And I think the surprising thing is that, well, Riot said, okay, we're going to rework Yuumi, but then they put out this statement and they basically say they're going to rework her, but from the sentiment of it, it still sounds like she's going to be almost the same. And what their vision for her, I think the most annoying part with what most people say is that the fact she can attach to a champ is untargetable, but still has all this utility. And Riot's point of view is that Yuumi is made that way so that these new players can play without having to really learn the game. But then, we're saying like that doesn't help a new player, like to just attach to somebody and all this stuff. So Riot in reworking Yuumi says they still want to keep that core concept of her being super beginner friendly. And I guess the community's just firing back and saying like that makes no sense at all. And like the direction of what it seems like they're trying to do doesn't seem like it's going to be helpful. What are your guys' thoughts? Oh man, I bet Alistair's just clickety clacketing away about Yuumi right now. I'm sure he wishes he was here for this
I
segment.
see the
But
bubbles.
what are your thoughts on the Yuumi quote unquote rework and just their statement regarding this champion?
Yeah, so my thoughts on the Yuumi, I used to think naively a year ago or so that there's no way if they did do a Yuumi rework, there's no way that it could be worse. That announcement should be well received because like it's just better than nothing, right? Uh, I'm scared. Let me first say in Dota, I believe, or was it Heroes of New Earth, there was a character that could attach and like combine or whatever, and it totally was balanceable. It's not like this concept of untargetability
Mm,
or combination characters or whatever is impossible to balance. However, the having that character be the character whose kit is built around being for newbies, that's the
yeah.
worst idea I've ever heard. You're
Right.
basically teaching them to only play one. They're not playing League anymore. They're
Mm-mm.
gonna be ostracized. First of all, like people just gonna like you only know how to play Yuumi. Is that it? And also you're not learning anything in League. It's also frankly not that fun. And I like playing Yuumi and Aram. I like just playing AP because it's stupid. But that doesn't mean I think it's good for the
Yeah.
game. I don't think it's fun for anyone. Like if you show someone League and you're like, you could be last hitting, doing all these cool outplays, or you could use PK Thunder on Yuumi and then click R once in a while, hit E, and that's it. You could literally go check your text messages every
Yeah.
queue. There's no way
Yeah,
anyone would
I
want to do that.
it's there's only like one or two ways where this is gonna be okay with me. It's where Yuumi. All right, so they said I have the Yuumi rework thing up, right? So they saying
Mm-hmm.
like the problem with Yuumi is when you get to higher levels of play, her being able to unattach and interact and then attach, like that dichotomy to do both is like too good because it's not only is it like really easy to do, but when good players are good enough at it, it's too easy with too high value, right? It's too broken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, so what they wanted to do, right, is make it for new players. So if you're gonna do that, right, then don't have the unattaching. They wanted a champion that just like attaches to somebody, right? Let's just say that they want that, regardless of how stupid that sounds. They want a champion that's just gonna attach to someone, right? Then just make the champion garbage. Like
Yeah.
make it only if it's a champion for beginners, then make it only good for beginners. As soon as you get to like actual ranked play, the champion should be garbage. It should. So I have a couple very extreme ideas where the champion should not be allowed to be played like in ranked or like if you're above level 30. Like is that I don't know if that sounds ridiculous or
Mm-hmm.
stupid, but if they want it to be if they're comparing to like Garen and Annie and stuff for beginners, then make it literally only a beginner champion. Make it like not able to be used. I mean, and then Alistair saying like allow only one summoner spell for Yuumi. That sounds interesting too. That's like maybe a way to balance it. I just don't even want to see it or think about it in my games when I queue up, right?
Yeah.
So, because you don't, if it's not good enough to be played, then I don't want my teammates to play it, right? Um, So that's some like ideas I have. It should just be garbage. It should just be bad. Because the way it is now is like, I mean, Alistair has mentioned this a couple times, where like she's so broken because you can trade as Yuumi level 1 and you just use your HP bar like it's free, it's
Mm-hmm.
nothing, and then all of a sudden you just win lane level 1 with one of the highest scaling champions of the game.
Yeah.
Is that fair? No, not at all. So just make the champion completely garbage. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm honestly down to just like remove her. Like I think that's actually the
You
truly
know,
best decision.
Riot's policy, they don't like to like delete things. I mean, it would be very, it's really, again, they must have some internal statistics about something, because
People love it,
every
yeah.
league, like, community, whether it's Reddit or Discord or wherever it is, like, nobody I talk to likes Yuumi, or they're not going to admit it. Like, well, one or the other, right? Like, I play Yuumi sometimes because sometimes I don't really feel like turning my brain on, and so, for that reason, I'll play her. But I would not, like, it would not be detrimental to the game if she was gone. Like, there's no like benefit to her having her here, and so I think Riot's reasoning for it doesn't make sense at all, and I think that's why most of the community is like, what are you talking about, right? Like, have you not heard like what we've been griping about this whole time? Yes, like in higher levels of play, yeah, the weaving in and out like can make it really broken. But even in lower levels of play, it's frustrating because a bad Yuumi player can literally just stay inside of somebody and
Yeah,
still be effective,
it's
like
broken
pretty
because passive
well.
stats and healing is still broken. Yeah,
If I
Yeah,
attach to double lift, I can probably win the game in diamond
exactly.
easily.
yeah.
And I could not even be looking at the keyboard. I could just hit E every like 20 seconds and I'll be
Dude,
good.
no, don't attach a double lift. Attach to a random ass bruiser jungler. You could
Yeah.
be in
That's
silver
actually
elo,
even more effective.
attached to a
Mhm.
random ass jungler in diamond, and you'll win that diamond game. It's not. It's like it got nerfed pretty hard going to preseason, right? With its like passive and mana or whatever. Dude, it's still
Hmm.
banned every single rank game I play. It's just been banned. It's been permabanned or 100% prioed. The last two worlds, 2021
Yep.
and 2022, was the years of Yuumi. And you know what? It was probably broken before then too. It's just people hadn't realized it, or honestly, we get a lot of the sentiment from players. They just didn't want to play it
Yeah,
because
they
it's so
didn't.
stupid. But they just
Hmm.
got forced into it when you realize, yeah, it's just too broken. Gotta play it. It's
Yeah,
too stupid.
I remember like pros were just like, yeah, dude, Yumi's just like lame or whatever, and they didn't want to play it for the when she was released, right? There was all this like, she's not a cool engage whatever character or whatever. Alistar said that she has a terrible design. The attaching's not bounceable. The mechanic where you can't be hit stupid, and then buffing her allies, it doesn't make sense that she gives them insane stats. You can get like 2 death caps plus worth of AP on a late game mage just for attaching. That's 120 plus AP. Why? Or not death caps, needlessly large rods. He also says the major issue with Yuumi is also indirect. Right now, bruisers are really strong. They've been the same for like at least the last few years. And the only counterplay is to kill them. So when you have a champ like Yuumi who gives them survivability and damage, it's not fair. And I do agree with that. I think when they say like, oh, when not they, when Mitchell was saying like, we need if she was just newbie friendly, like I think of old Warwick. Old
Yeah.
Warwick, extremely good for new players. You could jungle with your eyes closed. It was
Yeah.
so easy to play. It had like no skill shots and 2 buttons you needed to really press, Q and R, right? Everything else was like passive or like you click it once. And it was good up until plat. Like you could probably hit plat playing this character and you learn the fundamentals. But it will never ever win a game in Challenger because it's just terrible.
Mhm.
If you could put Yuumi at that power level, you find a way to do that, I never have to see her in my games ruining games because Warwick was only good if you were better than your opponents. It wasn't that good, right?
Mhm.
They can do it, and they have characters like that. Annie teaches you so much about the
Yeah.
fundamentals of the game. Like I learned melee
Garen.
through Annie, and then I played everything else. Yuumi cannot, in her current form, fulfill that, and so
Yeah.
they need to figure that out. And to their credit, they got a lot of flack for their post about how they wouldn't go back on her design; she would be untargetable. It is possible to balance that, but I don't have a lot of faith in them. That they haven't earned my trust in being able to do a good rework for something this broken. So it, they need to, like, I don't know, she needs to have a limit to how long she could be untargetable for. She has to detach every 5 seconds. She can only attach in front of her opponent, in front of her ally. And if she does that, then it's very predictable when she has to unattach, right? When her ally gets CC, she gets knocked out. I want all of these things in there. So she has to use her brain.
Yeah.
Like she has to detach when she sees hard CC coming or else she'll die.
Hmm.
I think like the whole like using your brain stuff is like the scary part. Like if good players can use their brain, then Yuumi as a concept is just gonna be too good. Because if you can do smart things with Yuumi, then her concept is too broken. So I don't know if we want to go that direction. I'm still on the boat of the just remove her because honestly, if you are of the opinion that you want to help new players get into league, then she just maybe just make a better tutorial, right? Maybe just teach your players better. Maybe just work harder on getting new players into the game instead of making this weird champion to fill that role. Just get players better at learning how Garen and Annie work and work harder on teaching people how to play the game from the beginning because that is a problem with League of Legends. Getting new players, especially in NA, doesn't happen very much, right?
Yeah.
You go around to young kids or teenagers or young adults, right? There's a huge stigma against League of Legends. So I think honestly, right, just like if you're worried about this aspect of new players getting into the game and being able to learn, work harder on teaching them and like work harder on having better tutorials
Yeah.
instead of creating this abomination of a champion to just band-aid the issue that just makes everything else worse. So
And honestly,
I don't know,
like
remove it.
there, like Kevin already mentioned this, but there are champions, even like enchanter type champions, that are easy enough. Like Sona, like literally, like okay,
Yeah.
so she is very squishy, right? But maybe you come up with a champion that is Sona esque, but maybe doesn't have as much heal or shielding or utility, but maybe survives a little longer, right? But just something where you get the idea of like supporting or being a utility champ or something like that, right? Like I play enchanters because they're pretty easy, right? Like that's my style of play, right? But Yuumi becomes to the point because of her mechanic that it's beyond like easy, and it doesn't help. Like you should be able to die. Like that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like it's part of the game. Like Yuumi literally, like if you just stay attached and you keep your person alive, you never die. And I think that's unhealthy because it doesn't teach a natural aspect of the game, which is dying. Like you need to know how to position yourself so that you don't die. It doesn't matter what role you're playing. So, I mean, I think for all those reasons, I think that's why most of the community is just like, I think you're missing the mark here, Riot. Like we get you want to target new people, but you've done that in the past with good champs. Like we believe you could do it with this rework or just delete her altogether and come up with new champs. Like it's
Yeah.
all right to say oopsie.
You want free karma on Reddit, or you want free upvotes, or you want free Twitter reply? Just vote. Just like make a thing like remove Yuumi XD. Everyone agrees with you.
Yeah.
Everybody's down for it. There's
Yeah.
nobody in the community who's not down for the removal of Yuumi.
Right.
So you know what? Just listen to us, Riot. Okay, you want to kill LCS? Kill LCS. God damn
Yeah.
it, I don't care. I just don't want Yuumi in my games.
Right. Well, that's that's another Riot WTF moment. Now here's the third one, which I think we could dive a little into this, but it's basically the meta right now and how the meta has been and preseason. So it's kind of a loaded topic, but there's so much, right? Like so preseason happened, we've got new items, like all these super crazy tank items that are really being built by everyone, becoming so it's making like bruisers and any other champion that builds these tank items unbelievably healthy and still able to do a lot of damage. And so it just makes the whole bruiser meta even more unfun. The jungle changes were crazy where everybody can jungle now and they've nerfed some things. ARAM took big changes, and there were a lot of mixed reviews there. So like for a lot that's been happening, Riot didn't like actually put a lot of new things into the game that like were game changing in a sense of like new dragons or new maps or anything like that. But the changes that they did put in there seem to kind of re-emphasize a meta that's kind of been tired for a while, which is just
Yeah, it's
a
a
lot
slow
of
one.
healing.
Yeah.
All these people can heal. They do a ton of damage. You can't kill them. Enchanters are still out of control. It's like,
Yep.
where is it gonna, where's it gonna end? Like, what's the end game for this meta? So let's kind of just talk about all of that in general, and I'll leave it just kind of open ended because there is so much to talk about, like in this preseason, as far as where the meta is regarding items, regarding champions, kits, all of that stuff. So I'll let you guys just open up whatever is most like sticks out most in your mind as far as like playing the game right now.
I think what sticks out most in my mind is that, and this could just be because we're used to it, but I felt like 90% 90% of the changes from the durability patch were just overwritten. I think that when the durability patch happened, I felt kind of tanky. And even at the beginning of the season, when Jack Show was pretty good, Heartstealer was pretty good, and all the items were okay. Yeah, I felt pretty tanky. They've been nerfing it for tanks and not nerfing it for bruisers. And they like bruisers, yeah, you lose a little bit of your bonus stats, but the bonus stats and the amplification, right, was it hurts the tanks a lot more because they need to be tanky. They don't have any other identity. The heals are still there. So when you nerf the tankiness, like, okay, I mean, bruisers are still chilling. The real conversation I think I wanted to have was like, I do agree bruisers are broken, right? Like it's kind of nonsense the way they can get out of control, but they're broken because of items. And I think it's dangerous to nerf the bruisers and then do the Riot Classic where you just delete the item or nerf it to the ground later on. I really think they need to start addressing the items and like get it out of the way before the new season starts. Because I would hate to see, even though I don't like Aatrox, I think it's a great for viewership. It's like some of the most iconic moments in the league are just like an Aatrox popping up. That's fine. He can be a heal tank, whatever, but it can't be this absurd. So nerf healing and nerf the access to healing. If a healer champ wants to heal, that's fine, but you need to have counterplay. Like make Grievous at least a little better. It doesn't have to destroy them. It doesn't have to invalidate them like Mundo gets invalidated, but you need some counterplay, right? And take DD out or take DD back to physical only. Like it was so fine for so long how DD worked, and you just had to use your brain to pick it. Now it's just nonsense. You just pick it, and like 4 or 5 characters just absolutely go wild, and there's no counterplay if they get ahead. So I think that's my first take on it. And I really wish that we had better shield break and better healing cut because Serpent's Fang is also awful for mage teams. Like you just want to play more mages. What? I have to build a Serpent's Fang on Karthus, which I did do in Clash.
Yeah, you don't.
We
play
won,
mages.
but it felt awful.
You don't play mages. Mages are troll right now. They're mages and like engage supports to me seem like the two worst roles right now. Engage supports are like you're the new early game jungler. You don't get stuff done early, you just get outscaled and you're just like a Death Dance reset for the enemy bruiser. Same with mages, right? It takes too long for you to get online, and then when you hit your spikes, the enemy bruiser builds a null magic into a Mob Mortius. It's such an efficient item for them, and then you're useless. You build Void Staff, Death Cap, all this crap. They build Death Stance, Mob Mortius, and they're just ubiquitously tanky against everybody. So it's really rough out there. I'm gonna tackle a very specific thing that I've been thinking about for a bit. It's just bruisers itemization, right? But it's like how the itemization is. So I want to talk about Tiamat and Ravenous Hydra. We kind of talked about it before in the last podcast, but this is kind of like me extending upon what I was talking about last time. So we had a problem a couple seasons ago with Tiamat, right? It was being built on everybody. It was when the build path was longsword, rejuve bead, right? So every jungler and top laner was building it. It was still a bruiser meta. They're too strong, right? And it got changed. It got basically removed. It got reworked with the mythic stuff. The problem with this like item back then was it was really easy to build because you could just go back, you could buy a longsword if you didn't have a good buy, or you could just finish it up. It was pretty cheap, and then it had the active and the passive for AoE clear, so it was good for damage combos, right? So like a lot of champions, they can just do a Tiamat active during their combos. They barely any cast time, and you get lots of wave clear. When you give such early wave clear to champions who don't have it, they just get out of control so fast. And when you can buy longswords like that, it's so easy to just go back. Even if you have a bad buy, you can always increase your power with every recall. Um, this led to ridiculous snowballing, so they had to change it, right? So now we had a different version of Ravenous Hydra, where no one really built it last season that much, right? And I think secretly it was still really strong, but just everyone was on the mythic hype train, right? Everyone was building mythic's first item. Now though, you're really incentivized to build Ravenous Hydra early because of the stacking mechanic. And to be fair, Tiamat as an item itself is not as good. It's a lot harder to buy because you have to build pickaxe into Tiamat, and there's no active to it. So the damage in combos isn't as strong. It's just a wave clear item. That is okay, all right? It's a big improvement from what they had in the previous Tiamat. The problem with it, though, is that you can still stack longswords. And I think that is the base issue with bruisers right now, is that compared to the other classes, right? If you get screwed over in lane, or you have a bad buy, or you have an awkward recall, you can still buy longswords, and it fits into every single item that you need in the game.
Yeah.
Where for mages, it's really awkward to buy amp tomes because they're 435 versus 350, right? You have to buy mana crystals, you have to buy blasting wands, and then your mythic completion is 1,000 golds
Yeah.
for Ludens and Leandries. That's a huge problem for them. That makes it so that there's this big gap where you're sitting on last chapter and a blasting wand or a fiendish codex, and you have 1,000 gold before you can get a power spike. All of the mythic completions and the item completions for bruisers, 650 for Ravenous Hydra, 700 for Gore Drinker, 550 for Death's Dance, right? These are all the big ticket items. 750 for Eclipse. So this is a huge problem because also when you look at 80 carries and their mythics, right? It's easy to build Noon Quiver, that's fine. But then to complete Noon Quiver, 600 gold. Crit Cloak, 600 gold. Pickaxe, 875. Gale Force, Kraken Shield Bow, 625, right? It's so much more gold and so much harder to be efficient on these other champions. Okay, so basically itemization is too simple and easy and like very forgiving for bruisers. If you make a mistake, you can buy a longsword. If you don't make a mistake, you can get these really great items like Tiamat, you can get Vamp Scepter, Caulfield's Hammer. That's the big problem, I think, that is like it seems it's not exciting, right? It's not an amazing or interesting thing to talk about. But I think Caulfield's Hammer is such a big problem. It's too efficient and easy. It's like you get 25 AD and 10% CDR for 1100 gold, and it has the easiest, simplest build path. Longswords into 400 gold completion for Caulfield's Hammer, and it builds into every single item. Builds into Death Dance, Gore Drinker, Ravenous Hydra, Maw of Mortius, and then you don't even need to go further, right? It keeps going, right? Essence Reaver, all these great items for bruisers, and I just think it's too efficient of an item. Caulfield's Hammer feels like it's the outlier in terms of efficiency. So I think nerfing that item could actually be a really big deal. Even if you don't change the end product of how Ravenous Hydra and Death Dance and all that stuff looks, the way you get there is so important in League of Legends
Yeah.
that like you can get stuck for so many champions, but you never get stuck on bruisers. So I think if you can make a point where bruisers get stuck in monetization, where if you do make a mistake or if the enemy plays well and denies you of gold, right, or denies you an easy back, a simple back, then you can punish them so much harder, and you can make it so that they just don't get to like they don't get this get out of jail free card by buying longsword. So I think nerfing stuff like Caulfield's Hammer is like a really simple and effective way to like help long-term bruiser itemization, because in the short term, right? Yeah, you can adjust Ravenous Hydra over and over again. You can adjust healing here and there, buff Grievous Wounds, nerf Aatrox a little bit, right? But you're always going to continue to have this tempo problem where games are just so forgiving for bruisers and melee champions that build AD items that it's just going to be another champion comes up as the next problem, right? You nerf Aatrox and you nerf Ravenous Hydra, you still got Death Dance. Players are still going to build Gore Drinker. You're just going to go on to like Aurelia or Lee Sin or blah blah blah. You're just going to go to the next one because they're
Yeah.
all too broken. So I think the way that we get there is how we fix it. And then, but then, you know, let's not kid ourselves, okay? Ravenous Hydra, Death Dance, stupid bro. Those still need to be nerfed
Yeah.
too. So it's like the way you get there is too easy, and the end product is too broken.
Yeah.
So it's just all of the above now.
I mean, I totally agree with you, by the way, on all of those things, because you're right. Like the build path does make a difference. Like you can have much better early buys with bruisers because of, you know, the longswords. They're 350 gold. They don't cost much, right? So you could pretty much, and that's why sometimes people just buy 4 of them, because you can build them in anything, right? And it's fine.
Flexibility,
you can't,
it's so
flexibility.
Important.
It's so important, and you can't do that with other roles. My thing that I would, and I saw a Reddit thread, so it's not my really original idea, but I do think that part of it is that, and this could be the items too, but I just think that there's so much innate healing everywhere from characters that aren't necessarily supposed to heal. Like as a class as a whole, like when you talk about something like in MMOs, you know, I like the healer class. Like I think it's a cool, fun thing, but the fact that people can heal without a healer, like you have so much omnivamp in everything, whether it's in items or in their kits. Like I get some thematics for some champions make sense, like Swain or Vladimir. Like those are, health stealing champions. That makes sense, right? But like I think a bruiser class in general there's so much healing, innately in them that it's just overtuned, right? And then like with the lack of, effective heal cut, or like whether it be in the items or just who can build it or who should build it, like it just feels kind of like a waste because it's almost necessary because in any case you're gonna have some champ that's gonna do some kind of healing. And for me, the Reddit idea that I saw was something towards the effect of like take out all kind of Omnivant, except certain few that are thematically it's supposed to be in there, but only leave healing to like those that are meant to heal. Like, so if you are an enchanter, like that's where your healing comes from. Any other champ, okay, you build tank stats, you build health, you build whatever. If you're a bruiser, build bruiser type items, but there's no type of lifesteal. Like you start losing health, you lose health, right? And maybe you have a shield or something, but healing should be left for the healers. And I mean, it's not a new solution. We all know healing's been out of control and the lack of healing items is not there. But I just think that if we don't stop it like as a global, like everybody just has it like ability haste, like it's just a stat, like how much Omnivamp do you have? That's what it feels like. Everybody just has Omnivamp, whether it's in their kit or in an item, then it's going to always just be high. It's just going to be healing everywhere. And it's going to feel out of control because you have enchanters that are also still healing you and then no heal cut. So in my opinion, like bruisers should not be, they should be a little tankier than just your straight assassin or straight damage dealers. But it shouldn't be through healing. It should be through either shielding or health building or even armor, whatever it is that you build. But that's just a thought that I saw that I really liked because I do feel like that's why bruisers are so strong. And then you add a Yuumi to them or add like a Sona or Seraphine to them. And it's just ridiculous. You're just like, okay, not only are they healing themselves.
AoE damage. We're at the point where bruisers are the best team fighting champions and the best scaling champions in the game.
Yeah.
That's not what the bruiser class is supposed to be like. They're supposed to be strong in the early game, strong in the mid game, right? They can be a pseudo frontline in the mid game. But once you get to late game though, they should shred like butter. They should be useless because that's when ADCs, tanks, and mages should shine, the late game. But bruisers right now, you throw Ravenous Hydra and Death Dance, they're the tankiest, they do the most damage, and they're the best team fighters.
Yeah.
It's just too much. It's just way too much. And I don't think anybody's going to disagree with me when I say that stuff, too. That's how ridiculous we've gotten. We have, as a community, unanimously agreed that bruisers are obliterating the rest of the classes. And you know what? We're getting baby slaps to the nerfs. Like the nerfs for Ravenous Hydra are like little baby slaps. And it's no surprise to anybody that it's still a broken item. Since its nerfs, Ravenous Hydra has only increased in pick rate, which means that every time it gets nerfed and shows up the patch notes, players realize how broken this item is and that the nerfs are not even close to offsetting, that players are just getting smarter and better at using this broken item. Everybody's rushing it. I'm rushing it on every champion. You know what Akali's best build is? It's rushing Ravenous Hydra. Isn't that insane? It's actually right. You just build long swords in lane, and you last hit better, and you do more damage, and you get Ravenous Hydra, and you're just an insane. You build Jack Show, or you could build Gore Drinker, or you could build AP. You could just go right into AP Akali after that, and it's just better than AP Akali right now because you just don't die. You just sustain like crazy. So I mean, Zed is building Ravenous Hydra, an item with no lethality or armor pen. That is not okay for an assassin to be allowed to do. If you're Talon and Zed and you don't build armor pen, you should not deal damage because that's not what your class is supposed to do. I just think it's totally fucked. It's so fucked.
There has never been an iteration like in the past. Like they left Omnivamp off for a long time, right? Because it didn't make sense, and also range characters would not be able to use Hydra items in such a manner. For some reason, as a lit, they're like, yeah, Titanic. Yeah, Ravenous. Yeah, build it to your heart's content. There's no penalty. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, what? How do you mean there's no penalty? I mean, Zed's not range, but like Zed gets quadratic scaling. Like if you're between an E and a Z or a Shadow and a Z and he E's, they double splash onto you. And you're just like, what the heck? What is going on here? You can get absolutely destroyed. Like it is so nonsense, the amount of damage. It doesn't have like any balance controls. And I will say, yes, it's preseason. We've had wild preseasons in the past. Like this is kind of, to a lesser extent, this is kind of what happens every year, right? We kind of freak
Sure.
out and then they tone it back. The issue, I think, what's scaring me is not that they won't tone it back. It's just the direction of the items, right? It doesn't make sense. As Alistar said himself, he said bruisers are supposed to be in the middle ground between tank and damage. The bruisers are tankier than tanks. This I agree with. They just survive longer, right? And they do more damage than ADCs. That's true for like 80% of the game. Late game, I will push back. I think AD carries do more damage objectively.
Yeah, in the late game.
That's
Yeah.
that.
make
Why
it
would you
there.
pick one then? You
If
could
you
pick
make
a
it
bruiser
there,
down
though.
there.
But
Yeah.
that's
Almost
because
have
the
as much burst
bruisers,
as assassins.
the
What's that?
bruiser, like people complain like ADCs are killing me in bruisers. Like, that's because you're like running in 1v4 to like try and because you think you can kill. Like bruisers are just the main characters of the game, guys. Like
Yeah.
the amount of times that like you've seen a fed bruiser try to 1v4 and then like it's actually like it's like way too close. It's like, wow, he almost did it. Like
Yeah.
that's just not cool. That's just
Yeah.
not cool, man. Like no champion should be able to do that.
I mean,
Yeah.
part of me thinks like, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on this. Like, what if it was like, I know this will never happen because people don't like to be put in like a category or a bubble, but like, what if champions that were meant to be tanks could only buy tank items and, or like,
Yeah.
because like you said, like you have these people who are like a collie building Jack show, that doesn't seem right. Like
No,
to
it's
still
so
be
good
able to
under.
do damage, right? You know what I mean? Like assassins should have a certain class of items. Like, I mean, in I'm going back to MMOs again because they are, big for being class specific, right? So like certain armor, you can't wear it if you're like a conjurer or a mage, right? You can't wear like heavy metal armor, right? It doesn't make sense thematically. And like to me, it seems like League is just like, it doesn't matter what class of character you are. I'll just build whatever the broken item is, and it just makes your character broken. And like, part of me thinks that if they took a bite out of the, MMO genre and like kind of classified it as like, hey, no, you're in a specific class of characters, because they do this in a sense, like when you sort champions and champ select or in items, I mean, like you could pick like, do you want mage, do you want assassin? So they have some kind of classifications in there. I know there are champs that could probably play more than one role and maybe they have access to more, but to me, it just makes sense. Like there should, it shouldn't be, that diverse in a sense. It doesn't have to be. I know it's fun to play full AP mouth sometimes in ARAM, but you know what I mean? Like thematically in the game, like to me, I feel like maybe that might help alleviate some problems, but I don't think it'll happen.
I think that the easiest, or not easiest, the cleanest way to solve this is that when you pick your mythic, you've committed. I think that when you pick a mythic, for example, if I pick Ludens, I am committed to, I can only build X series of items with a few flex, right? Like you're allowed one tank item, right? You're allowed one fawn if you really need it, or whatever you feel like, a Warmogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I think that would actually make the game more accessible. When you pick an item, they say, here are your choices now. You don't have to look at all like 150 items and be like, what do I do now? Right? Because their recommended builds sometimes are garbage. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're garbage. And then you solve a lot of problems with balance, because whenever you pick a mythic, you can't abuse it, right? You can't just be like, I picked Dustblade full tank. It's like, what?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Weird. Dustblade's not broken, but I'm just giving a random example.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make it easier to streamline balance. You're like, if you want to go to the bruiser archetype, here are your choices.
Yep.
Stop abusing the items that our tanks are supposed to use. If you want to abuse them, you get one, right? And you can't go full build into like what makes a tank strong. And then you can have synergies. Like the more tank items you build, the more stronger like damage reduction bonuses you get. We already have mythic passives, right? If mythics actually put you down a route, then the mythic passives would make sense. Right now the mythic passives are just kind of like just bonus stat sticks, which there's only a few interesting ones. Most of them are just like 5 ability haste, 7 ability haste. I'm like, I don't even notice. If you ask a new player, they might not even know what a mythic passive is.
I think in that scenario you'd have to like force people to buy mythics first, because right now the problem is like, dude, I actually think this is the most viable strategy for so many champions right now. Is you go Ravenous Hydra Rush into Death Dance. You haven't even bought a mythic yet. So I actually think those are the two best items in the game, and you just buy those two first as soon as possible.
Yeah, and they synergize. The more AD you get, the better the DD is. It's so dumb.
Yeah, the better DD, and then neither of them give health, right? So all that damage reduction is like just better because you heal more, and then damage reduction like scales better with healing instead of like just having flat health, right? And then same with the armor, right? The armor from Death Stance just scales better with healing. Dude, I just think it's so funny that I've gotten to this point where I realize, right? All right, I bought the item that gives me the most damage in the game. It gives me healing and it gives me like AoE team fighting, right? Now all I need to do is not get one shot. Oh, Death Dance doesn't let me get one shot. And then I need to reset, right? I hit everybody in the entire team fight at the same time. So if any of them die that I damage, I get a reset. And it's just gotten to this point where there's two items in combination are so synergistic and so amazing. They feel every niche for the bruiser. It's crazy, guys. Like,
Yeah.
I think like these fixes that you guys are recommending are interesting. Like, uh, I mean, I don't think they're ever gonna happen. Alistair has made a point. Like, off meta stuff is honestly some of the most interesting and fun stuff that League has to
Yeah.
provide. I think that the creativity of being able to do funny, weird stuff and having it work is just amazing for like, non-competitive games. It's just when you get to competitive stuff, that stuff turns into like, oh, that's just really stupid and abusable. But I'd be curious. I'd be curious, right? What if you had to start a mythic and then you could only buy a certain line of items? It would create a new world where it's like now Riot is allowed to add a ton of items now
Yeah.
because
Right.
they can't add too many items because they're just gonna find some
Someone's gonna find a way.
unintended
Yeah.
like interaction that like we added this dumbass item and it just interacts with this one champion in a ridiculous way and now we have to remove it. We don't know what to do.
Mhm.
Like that like Riot is so hamstring because their game has gotten so complicated that they're afraid of doing too many new stuff. And when they do new stuff, we just complain because it's stupid and broken. So I'm actually willing to entertain this whole like you have to buy a mythic first, and that mythic slots you into what kind of items you buy. That could be interesting. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I just think that it's cool because like if you did kind of stay true more to the character class, like team comps would be really cool. Like team comps matter for sure, but like you definitely offset stuff because of the itemization that you can go. Like again, like I was telling Mitchell, I've been playing Tank Senna again, but with like I've been playing it with Heartsteel and Titanic and Black Cleaver, and I just don't die, and it's really fun. But like that shit, like that's not what Senna was meant to do, right? Like, and it is fun. Like the off meta stuff is fun because let's be honest, people like to find things and abuse it, and it's like I just pub stomp on people, right? But you said like competitive play, that's just it shouldn't happen there. But I think if you did kind of categorize champions more often, then comps would be cool. I think team fights would be, because if you're an assassin and you really are squishy, like you can't buy bruiser items, like, but you could buy super high damage items. Like you could probably get 2 or 3 kills and then you're dead, or 2 kills and you're dead. But you're assassin. Your job is to mark the highest priority target, right? Not be able to kill them, stay alive, go all over the place, still stay alive, and then pentakill everyone.
And then, yeah, it's like, dude, they are the main carries. Like the thing that it's just when you get to ARAM, right, high elo ARAMs, or just my like mid plat elo, it's like the highest priority target is the enemy bruiser. Like you go kill the enemy AD carry, who cares,
Nobody
bro?
cares.
You go kill the enemy whatever, who cares? Okay, the enemy Lee Sin, the enemy Hecarim, the enemy Aatrox, Darius, they are taking over the fight.
Yeah.
They are ramping up and they're killing everybody.
Yep.
That's
100%.
insane, dude.
I mean, I'll argue. I think this is the perfect time for this system. Not even just like, well, people I think we're actually the minority, the people who experiment a lot and try to. People want to be told what to build. Do you know how many people I see just go
That's
to
me.
UGG, League of Graphs? Like, no, and it's not a problem. But this is the meta, right?
Yeah.
Most people just like either like literally just click the recommended in the shop, which used to be complete ass, but is at least a little better in the preseason. I've noticed. Good for you guys, right? Or they go to a website. They're a little bit more hardcore, right? 90, I would venture 90 to 95% plus do not invent builds. They just take the recommended, whatever their friend tells them, or a website, or whatever the friend tells them based off a website, right?
Website,
And so if you're gonna do what's good for the greater good, I think it's fine to put people down a path. I think they'd feel a lot more comfortable. In fact, I'd argue when mythics were introduced for a very long time, besides Ezreal, most 97% of characters just built a mythic first because it was the best item. They nerfed the shit out of a lot of mythics and started to make them less and less impactful. And now that's why you see whenever a broken item is super broken, you know it's broken because it can be picked first item.
Yeah.
And
you guys remember Eclipse? Eclipse has been only nerfed for the last 2 years. It used to be so goddamn insane. It is just a shell of his former self, Eclipse.
Yeah.
But you know, it's still broken. It's insane. Yeah, mythics are crazy. I think it would be interesting to go back to this world where it's just you buy a mythic and then
I
you
mean,
just
I
streamlined.
like how, so I will say like runes, right? Like I am kind of the copy and paste rune type guy, but I like the
Yeah.
fact that they added the rune thing now
Recommended.
where you could see
Yeah.
different kinds and styles. And I like that because I actually use it a lot because I'm like when I'm looking, I'm like, okay, especially in ARAM, like, do I want to be more, damage and bursty, or do I want to be a little more sustaining? And it kind of helps, and it puts me on a path, and then I'll go into it and see if there's individual ones that I like better or whatever. But at least it gives me a guide. And so again, like, to just go into your point, Kevin, like, a lot of times you hear me asking you when we're playing ARAMs, what should I build? Because most of the times I'm just like, I don't have time to really, all right, I don't have the patience. That's what it is. Patience to think about what I want to build, right? So a lot of times I do want to just be like, okay, this is recommended, this is generally what you want to do, and then make a couple of decisions at that point. So I would agree that I think I'm in that player base of like, look, I'm not gonna come up with anything creative, I'm just going to the next hot thing. Like what is this site saying that, what are the Koreans building and abusing? Yeah, I want to try it because it looks fun. But honestly, I'm not inventing stuff. So I think I'm okay. Pigeonhole me, guide me into a way, and just let me pick that and let me just play the game.
I think I'll be pretty sad, right? I am one of the minority of those players that I love to build such weird stuff to find broken stuff.
Yeah.
Like, the whole Frostfire demonic embrace
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
last year, that clearly became super turbo broken.
That was
Like
a wild year, man.
that was
Yeah.
a wild year, right? It took a while for that to catch on, but then you started to see that crap everywhere where it's random ass shit. And then
Yeah.
it turned from Frostfire to Sunfire. Sunfire demonic was just this ridiculous thing. And then you got Sunfire Nashers all of a sudden. Like, it, it is fun to experiment with these things and make these things. So I guess I wish we lived in a world where the game was balanceable to do this weird stuff and have it not be stupid broken, right? But we don't live in that world. Riot's not good enough at balancing their own game. Honestly, I don't think anybody is. This game is way too complicated to actually perfectly balance.
Yeah.
So yeah, take some of the variables out. Take some of
How
the
would you
nuance out
how
to
would you
make it easier to
feel
balance.
how would you feel? I don't know if you'd like this, but what if they took the restrictions off just for like ARAM or normal mode, normal draft? So like if you're playing ranked, you got to play the mythic, line of, itemization. But hey, if it's normal draft or ARAMs, go ahead, knock yourself out. Find something really broken to build. And then you have a for fun mode where you're experimenting, but it's not in any kind of competitive setting.
It,
You know.
I would be so down for that. That would be cool, but I don't think Riot will ever go to that because ranked solo duo is like
This is
their
the most,
baby.
yeah,
Like they
exactly.
will never want to ever take attention from that. I mean, we're gonna talk about the ARAM changes later, I'm
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, Riot's never gonna go for that. Ranked is their little baby. If you do anything to take attention away from their baby, they will throw a fit. So
it's true.
I think it would be cool though. Honestly, we just need more game modes. We just need more game modes. I want to play Nexus Blitz. I want to play Dominion, and I want to build random ass
Yeah,
items all the
yeah,
time. Because
heck
you know
yeah.
what? You get passive gold. You can do more stuff. You level up quicker. I just want to do more things. Like one of the reasons why I do get bored playing Summoner's Rift all the time is I'm just bored, man.
Yeah,
I'm just like I just want my items. Like I
yep.
don't want to farm here for another 7 minutes. Okay, cool. I had a first pick in top lane. I'm just getting bullied for 12 minutes and I don't get to have fun until I'm murdering the ADC in the mid game, right? So
Hmm.
I just want my gold. I want to build stupid items. I'd be down for that. I mean, but like, is Riot ever gonna do that? No.
Yeah.
Riot's like, we only care about ranked and we're gonna
Riot.
destroy ARAM. Yeah.
Yeah, let's transition to ARAM
Should we transition?
because like I know you guys talked about this a little bit. I know I've asked you guys off stream, what are your thoughts on the changes? And so now again, some time has passed. What do you guys think? What are your overall thoughts about ARAM? Because I know you guys play it a lot. I play it a lot, not as much as you guys, but I do play it quite heavily because I do enjoy it. But what are your thoughts on the changes? Obviously, you got the little teleporter thing. You got the walls coming down and making these choke points. Respawn timers are much longer. So I mean, what are your thoughts overall, Kevin? Let's obviously start with you because I think you might play the most ARAM out of all of
Oh
us.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have like 6,500 ARAM games played all time.
Yeah.
This year I have
Yeah.
over 1,000. We
Damn.
did like an ARAM recap off some guy's app on on Reddit. Anyways, here's what I think. I think the teleporters are a good change. I think it makes sense. It was just kind of dumb to walk the lane, just sitting there like
Yeah.
for 15, 20 seconds doing nothing. Teleporters are fun. You could do some cool plays. That's cool. Death timers, interesting idea, overtuned. The death timers being longer is just really boring. You're just like,
Yeah.
you lose a fight in the mid game, and sometimes 2 turrets just fall, and you're like, wow, that was stupid. I think the
Yep.
walls falling down, I like the idea of more terrain. It's poorly done. The chokes are awful. Characters like Timo, Shaco,
Oh
and
my
Nivea just
God.
give you hell, and you just can't play the game anymore. And then the
Veigar.
brush,
Yeah.
I think it's a healthy change. I think my final thing about ARAM this year, I think ARAM Clash was, besides the bugs that a lot of people experienced, was fun. I really liked it. It just showed that you do need to have everyone have all champs unlocked. It's so much cooler when you don't have like 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 perfect characters on the other team, because at high elo ARAM, at least everyone plays ARAM only characters. And then I think that the balancing of like plus percents have gone out of control. Like I've just seen so many LeBlancs with 17% plus damage, 17% damage reduction just win the game. And it's silly. I think there should be a hard cap to how much you can be buffed. You shouldn't be Kha'Zix with 10% more damage, 15% damage reduction, 20% tenacity, 20% extra healing, all in one kit. Like what is that? There's no
Yeah.
way, right? But it's balanced towards like the majority of players and how hard it is. So honestly, I might just be. It's just like how challenger players will complain about certain things that like most people just don't ever experience, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I actually think they're putting more attention in ARAM, but I don't know if I like it
Yeah.
because I think it's a net worse because of now they like, oh, 10 characters need tenacity, including a Kali and Zed. I'm like, what? Uh,
Yeah. It's kind of
so
funny. It's like we were complaining. The ARAM community was like, "We want more attention. Do more stuff with us." Like, you got our
Yeah.
attention. Monkey
Shoot.
paw curls. Yeah, it was unfortunate. Yeah, I think in terms of balance, right? I think the percentages are just lazy, not very good. I mean, you can tell that they go on some statistics. What's the highest win rate? ARAM champions, the lowest win rate. We just buff them and nerf them so they get closer to 50%. It's just stupid, right? That's just not real balance. It's just lazy, right? I think that what they did with Ashe, right, where they reduced ability haste for her specifically and then increased her attack speed by a little bit, that is closer to the way I want it to go. How I actually want it to go, and I've had this opinion for years now, is they need to go into each champion and tune just their abilities, right? So like you go on Wikipedia, right? You see Ashe's cooldowns, right? Her W goes from like 18 to like 3. It's so ridiculous. It's so dramatic, right? And that makes sense for Summer's Rift, sure, because she has
Yeah.
one ability that she uses. But I think for ARAM, it might make more sense for it to like go from like 14 to like 10, right? And then you don't have to do all these like weird percentages. You just actually change their kit. And when I think of, I've been learning how to code, and when I think about coding that, yeah, in my mind, you're just changing actually 5 numbers, probably, unless they create some weird ass spaghetti code where it's not just changing 5 numbers to change the cooldown of a champion. Then it should not be that complicated to do something like that. Similar thing with like what's another broken champion, right? Like Seraphine, right? Just like
Sona Seraphine, they got
Sona
buffed.
Seraphine, like they got buffed, right? And they have like okay, so the healing and shielding and debuffs and buffs and stuff to those champions, they do kind of make sense, right? But like I don't know how complicated it would be to change the code, but like maybe just changing like some of the area of width. Like Seraphine's biggest problem is her abilities take up the entire map, right?
Yeah.
Maybe changing some of the widths is a better change than just gutting her so she does 0 damage and does 0 healing. And then you buff her a little, and she has a 45% win rate. Then you buff her, and then she's just most broken again, right? You're always going to be in this zone where they're either useless or too broken, useless or too broken. So if you change other aspects of them, I think it makes it easier to balance. So that's like, Ashe, Seraphine, some ideas there. I think the gates are cool. I think the way that they balance death timers around the gates is bad. Death timers, like you say, too long in the late game, you can just lose a game. You have to die in the game mode, right? So if you get
Yeah.
punished for dying correctly, right? It used to be that if you died correctly, as in you died on the enemy sides of the map and you took up their time while you died and stuff, then you were rewarded because you would respawn. They would be lower in health. They would have less gold spent, and you would get to come back,
Yep.
and then you get rewarded for killing them on their side of the map because you can end. But now that's all taken away because of how long death timers are, and the warp gates. Yeah, they kind of change that aspect too. But I like it. I love the idea that you can be pushed up against your Nexus, right? And you're against a poke comp, and the only way you could engage before was you just had to run at them or hit a snowball. Now you can flank them. And it's actually really cool. It's so cool that the warp gates allow you to do that. But the death timers that they bounce around it, they make the game worse, unfortunately. I don't like the towers, the falling towers, the debris. Too many champions can abuse it. Kevin already mentioned a bunch. I'll skip that. I actually don't also like the mid brush. I don't like the brush because when I get into really high elo ARAMs, right? And I know I'm playing against good people, they have a champion with like long range CC or poke. They just camp that bush and you cannot play the game until your tower falls. You have to wait for your own tower to fall so you can play the game so they walk up. Right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just have a Syndra sitting in that side bush, and then you have another like tank maybe or another someone with long range sitting in the big brush. You control both bushes, and you are just so effed, right? The game could snowball from literally the first minute because your team is maybe a little slow to get to the map.
Yeah.
They get to the map fast, and they just camp the bushes. Dude, the game could be over from first minute. That's how actual laning works in LCS or in like League of Legends and Summoner's Rift too. I'm sure you can talk to Alistair and you can tell him I went to leash and I lost lane for leashing because the enemy they got bush control and they just shoved the wave over and over. We got poked and we just lost lane. I'm down 20 CS. So that is now a thing in League of Legends in ARAM that is unfortunately really frustrating. So I don't actually like the bush or the tower falls. I think they need to be relooked at. So,
yeah. Alistair says that he likes the gates because he doesn't accidentally walk over the health packs when he's walking back the lane, which I have done plenty of times. So I think that is definitely a huge plus.
It's fault. Why is this auto pathing?
I know.
Lane and you auto path to the side.
It's it makes no sense. I will say that I agree with all of your points, Mitchell. I don't like the new terrain adding thing. Like, it's overcomplicating things. Like, it's ARAM, right? Like, it's one lane. You know, you do need bushes because there are a lot of interactions with bushes and stuff like that. Maybe they were trying to do it with, you know, people that interact with walls, I guess, like, you know, like Poppy and, you know, I don't know, whatever. But it does, like, because of how wide the wall is, like, it's too abusable. Like, if they were going to add walls, it needs to be just little, like, you know, little like
make
I don't know,
like a
pegs or something.
Wall,
not like something that takes up 3/4 of it because it's too much of a choke.
Consistent. It blocks off the lane completely half the time, and then half the time it's like there's a gap there, and you're like,
there's a gap.
Okay, what's the sense behind this?
And every other game, it's on different sides too, which it falls. It's interesting. I mean, I actually think that's kind of cool, but it's like it's hard to learn the game. It's hard to learn what's good about it too when they make it inconsistent. A suggestion I saw on the ARAM subreddit, very small subreddit, like not a lot of people go on it, but a suggestion I liked that I saw was like the mid bush. Remember there used to be a little like dent thing by the tower that was kind of annoying, right? There's a little dent inside of the map. What if they made like a bump going out of the map and that's where you put the mid bush? Because if you want to put a mid bush to spice things up to help bush champions and stuff, then like give them their own little spot. Don't let it like actually take up the lane though, because when it takes up the lane, you just control the lane. But if you give it a little spot, right, give some people a room to breathe, then it's harder for them to abuse you. But you still get to help the bush champions. You still get to create some interesting fog of war like gameplay. But it's just too overbearing right now. If you get a comp diff and then they end up in lane faster, like, dude, I've just lost games off of that. And I'm like, I didn't get to play, dude. Like, we have a pretty good comp, but they just pressured us from the beginning and they snowballed on us.
That's the other thing is like, you know, I definitely noticed my games being a lot faster, which I actually don't mind that. I like because, you know, I can squeeze in more games. However, I don't like it when I'm on the receiving end of the punishment, especially if I'm playing like if I'm playing like a scaling champ, you know, because most people like to play for fun, you know, and so they don't try as hard, which is fine. I don't care, but they int so hard. Whereas before in ARAM, you could still kind of stall out even if your team is just running it down and get to a point where you're like, okay, we could still win this. But there are definitely mechanics now, or just, you know, when it's over, like they've snowballed you, your team fed a little too much, and you just can't scale. You just don't have enough time to stall, and they're just taking over the lane. So that's what at least it feels like to me. So sometimes I don't play, like I used to like playing Kale a lot. I don't play it as much now, or champs that just need a lot of time to get there. So that's my only thing about it. But I do like the faster game times. I do agree that death timers should be a little shorter. But overall, I mean, I like the hex gates and again, all the other things we mentioned. But is there any other last things that you wanted to talk about ARAM or anything in general as far as like meta And Riot, what are they doing with the Meta Sky stuff?
I got some predictions for
Okay.
for next year for what's gonna happen with the meta and who's gonna be top dog.
All
It
right.
is not surprising at all. In fact, it's gonna be a lot of champions we've already heard, but I don't think they're on the forefront of a lot of people's minds.
Wukong.
I think Wukong, Lee Sin, Sejuani. I think those are some of the 3 sleeper, really strong junglers that not a lot of people. Okay, a lot of people play Lee Sin, but not a lot of people play Wukong or Sejuani. I think that Sejuani, oh my god, she can build any of the tank mythics and they're good. She can build. I've been seeing Radiant Virtue Sejuani because her ulti gets down to a 40-second cooldown, so
Yeah.
you get Radiant Virtue all the time. That's more of like a, okay, I'm playing with the team sort of thing. But she's so crazy with Hearthsteel. She's so crazy with Frostfire or Iceborne or whatever they call it, and she's really crazy, obviously, with Jaksho. And you know what? She's one of the few tanks out there that can actually duel and just kill bruisers in the early
True.
game. So
Yeah.
she was broken last year. I think she's still gonna be broken this year. It's just not a lot of people are talking about her. Zac is another champion also that I think
Dude,
can duel
yes.
bruisers. He goes Conqueror, he goes Demonic Embrace, he goes Jaksho, really tanky stuff. And yeah, he can just straight up duel bruisers because you can't heal if you're just CC chained for 3 seconds straight, right? And you can't build tenacity against Zac either. So he's really strong. Wukong is also really strong because, well, you know what's crazy about Ravenous Hydra is that his ulti just procs it over and over and over again, and you're just killing an entire team by yourself. I mean, you're just bonking people like mad because guess what? Ravenous Hydra gives 20 ability haste for some fucking reason. I don't know why. And then Lee Sin is I think it's just if you're good at the champ's just crazy. You have good early ganks, you snowball. One of his big problems was he doesn't clear as fast as other junglers. So even if you get a lead in the mid game, you just don't clear as fast. So you can get outpaced by something like a Graves or a Hecarim or Udyr. But now you build Ravenous Hydra and you clear
Exactly.
instantly. Oh
Yep.
my god. If you can build Ravenous Hydra into straight tank and you land a Q and you auto E somebody, like, dude, you just like annihilated an entire like area. Like, oh my god, dude. So I think these champs are crazy because they honestly gutted a lot of the previous champions. Like they gutted Mordekaiser, they gutted Hecarim, they gutted some other dude, Udyr.
It's so good that we don't remember him.
Yeah, we gutted all these people. So now I think these other people are taking their spot. Really broken junglers. So yeah, that's the meta. It's Akali builds Ravenous Hydra first. It's crazy, guys.
So my last thing is Faker resigned with T1. World breaking news. No,
Let's go.
he signed again. But no, what I actually wanted to bring up, this ties in with what Alistair wants to say too, is I remember seeing a Reddit post that said that Yuumi has more in common with jungle pets than she does with champions.
Yeah.
Long story short, she's untargetable. She buffs you, and extra abilities come out of your character, and she sits on you the whole time, right? That's kind of weird. So I agree. I thought that was the funniest thing. And then Alistar's last thoughts was remove Yuumi in Death Stance.
Yeah. That's
sounds about Alistair-esque.
That's not a last thought. That's an everlasting.
That's an everlasting
thought.
thought.
Yeah.
Permanent
persistent thought.
Yeah. But I guess Yuumi is supposed to be a pet anyway, so I guess that kind of makes sense.
Oh,
but
God.
all right, well, that's gonna wrap it up. That's gonna be our last episode for the year. Look, the spring split starts January 26th. There is no lock-in, so we're gonna have to bring the hype. We'll definitely have an episode before then to talk about the rosters because all the things have been happening and we want to talk about it, but we'll save it till right before the split starts so that we can bring the hype and bring our predictions and, power rankings to what happens. Cause that is pretty much the only hype that is happening around the LCS so far. So I want to once again thank my awesome co-hosts, Kevin, Mitchell, and Alistair on Discord for always sharing their wise thoughts. But until next time, enjoy your climb on the Rift. Try not to be too toxic, and we'll see you all on the next episode. Peace.